Athens stirs in the faint light before dawn. On a rocky hill crowned with ancient olive trees, a soft wind whispers through the groves, carrying the salt scent of the distant sea. In this quiet hour, the city lies in gentle slumber under the gaze of the goddess for whom it is named. Athens, Athena's city, has yet to wake, but her presence is felt everywhere, in the silver-green leaves trembling softly on the olive branches, in the hush that blankets the sacred Acropolis, and in the very name of the people who will soon fill the morning air with their voices. Long ago, in the shadowy dawn of legend, Athens was a place of simple huts clustered near the foot of that craggy Acropolis. The first people here were farmers, herdsmen, and fisherfolk, humble souls who watched the sunrise gild the limestone rocks each morning and offered prayers to gods unknown. Their world was small, ringed by low hills and the sparkling waters of the Aegean. By day they toiled in sun-baked fields of barley and wheat or cast nets into the blue bay for fish. By night they gathered around hearth fires beneath glittering stars, telling stories of spirits in the streams and nymphs in the olive groves. They lived in a time when the line between myth and reality blurred, and the gods might wander into their lives disguised as traveling strangers or bright-eyed animals. In those misty ages, the Athenians told of ancient kings who guided the city's earliest steps. They speak of Cecrops, the first king, born of the very earth beneath their feet. Half man and half serpent, Cecrops was said to have emerged from the soil of Attica in a time before memory. Under the pale morning sky, one can almost imagine his serpent tail coiling among the rocks as he surveys the young city. Cecrops was no cruel tyrant of myth, but a civilizing king, a bringer of law and order in an age of chaos. It is whispered that in those primordial days people knew no marriage bond or justice system life was unruly and harsh. Cecrops changed that. He taught the people to lay aside old brutal ways to end bloody sacrifices and offer simple cakes and fruits to the gods instead of living victims. In a rustic clearing at dawn, one might picture a gathering of early Athenians as Cecrops presides. Instead of a goat's slaughter, they burn barley cakes and olives on a small altar of stones. A fragrant blue smoke curls to the sky, a gentler offering pleasing to heaven. Cecrops also introduced the sacred rites of marriage, binding men and women in union so that families formed with recognized children. He established proper burial for the dead in place of older, more barbaric customs, honoring the spirits of ancestors and giving them rest. By these acts, Cecrops led the Athenians from wildness to civility. Under Cecrops' rule, the gods themselves walked alongside mortals, or so the legends tell. One timeless tale recounts how Athena, gray-eyed goddess of wisdom, and Poseidon, lord of the sea, both laid claim to this young city. On a day when the sun shone brilliantly on the Acropolis rock, Poseidon struck the bare limestone with his trident, and a spring of salt water burst forth. Some say a war horse leapt from the fissure. The people gasped as Poseidon declared his gift, symbol of naval power and a reminder that the sea would ever sustain Athens, but the water was briny and not fit to drink. Then Athena stepped forward. Kneeling gracefully, she pressed her spear into the earth. Lo! A slender olive tree sprouted where it touched the first olive tree in Attica. Its green-gray leaves swayed, and its young fruit glistened. Athena spoke. This tree would be her gift. It would give food, rich olives to eat, oil to light lamps and soothe skin, and wood for shelter and tools. A gift of peace, nourishment, and enduring value. King Cecrops judged between these divine gifts. With solemn heart, he declared Athena the winner of this contest, choosing the olive's gentle promise over the sea god's force. Thus Athena became the city's patron and protector, and the city took her name. The people rejoiced. They vowed to honor her always, and indeed, legend says that very olive tree, Athena's tree, stood on the Acropolis for centuries, tended by priests and watered with spring water at festivals. In quiet moments, Athenians could climb the rock, see the twisted trunk and silver leaves of that sacred olive, and remember that their city was under the goddess's aegis, founded on wisdom and peace. As the sky lightens from indigo to soft pink, the early kings of Athens drift through memory like constellations fading with dawn. After Cecrops' time, many generations of mythical kings followed names passed down in half-remembered stories told by elders at dusk. There was Cranus and Erichthonius, born of the earth, raised by Athena herself, said some. Pandion the Wise, Erechtheus, who built a shrine for Athena on the Acropolis' very rock. In each tale, the kings are not merely rulers, but culture heroes, teaching new arts or instituting rites. One introduced the worship of Demeter at Eleusis, bringing agriculture's blessings. Another taught the taming of horses. Yet another established the festival of the Panathenaea in honor of Athena. These figures stand half in history, half in myth, but Athenians cherish their memory. In their hearts, the people know their cities' earliest steps were guided by both mortals of great spirit and gods who favored them. Of all those ancient kings, one stands out: Theseus, the hero king. Theseus' story is a rich tapestry of adventure and patriotic vision. He was said to be a son of King Aegis, or of Poseidon in some tellings, who grew up in Troezen across the Saronic Gulf. When Theseus came of age, he lifted a great boulder to retrieve his father's sword and sandals, left beneath it proof of his royal blood and strength. With those tokens in hand, young Theseus set out for Athens by land, deliberately choosing the perilous road where bandits lurked. In a series of trials, he slew or outwitted the miscreants that plagued travelers. He flung the robber Scyron into the sea, where a giant turtle devoured him. He out-wrestled the cruel giant Cercyon. He tricked Procrustes, who tortured guests on his iron bed by cutting Procrustes to fit his own device. By the time Theseus reached Athens' gates, the road was safe, and his name already celebrated. In Athens, Theseus confronted new challenges, intrigue in his father's court, and the looming shadow of King Minos of Crete, who exacted a gruesome tribute of youths and maidens. It was here Theseus performed his most famed deed. He voyaged to Crete as one of the sacrificial youths, entered the labyrinth, and slew the Minotaur, that half-man, half-bull monster born of Crete's queen with the help of Ariadne's thread to find his way out. Theseus returned on black-sailed ships, tragically forgetting to raise white sails of victory, which led to King Aegis's suicide in grief. Thus Theseus became king of Athens. But beyond these heroic exploits, what Theseus gave to Athens was something truly foundational: unity. In his time, Attica, the countryside around Athens, was a patchwork of little communities, each with its own chiefs, nobles, and interests. Theseus envisioned a synoikismos, a coming together of all Attica under Athens. He is said to have traveled to every town and village, persuading or compelling them to dissolve their local councils and come under the one government of Athens. "Let us all be Athenians," he proclaimed. It was a peaceful revolution. The disparate Attic peoples became one people, with Athens as their common city. To symbolize this union, Theseus established the Panathenaic Games, a grand festival where every 4 years all Attica joined in Athens to honor their patron goddess. Imagine the scene during Theseus' reign. Down dusty roads and mountain paths came processions from Marathon, Eleusis, Broron, and dozens of villages, all converging on Athens. There they paraded through the streets bearing offerings. At the head of the procession, a new embroidered robe, peplos, for Athena was carried, to be presented at her altar. Athenians of every stripe competed in foot races and wrestling on the broad dirt field, their tribal rivalries set aside in friendly contest. By night, around campfires, villagers and city folk shared wine and stories, no longer strangers, but fellow Athenians. Through Theseus' vision, Attica became one city, one people. Athenians would forever remember him as the great unifier, Much later, in democratic times, they would credit Theseus as having sown the first seeds of their equal society. In the legends, Theseus even showed a democratic spirit ahead of his time. Some tales claim that after uniting Attica, he voluntarily set aside some of his royal power, establishing a council and assembly so that the people could share in governance. One account, likely colored by later Athenian ideals, has Theseus dividing the populace into classes: nobles, farmers, craftsmen, and giving each a role in the administration, thus diminishing the absolute authority of the king. Another story says Theseus left his throne empty for periods and invited the citizenry to govern themselves, claiming he wanted to rule by the will of the people. Whether literally true or a retroactive dream, such myths spoke deeply to Athenians of classical times. They saw Theseus as not only a slayer of monsters, but as the father of Athenian democracy in spirit, a king who chose to empower his people rather than subdue them. Yet, like many heroes, Theseus' end was bittersweet. In his later years, his fortunes waned. Some say internal strife forced him into exile on the Aegean island of Skyros, where he met a mysterious death, pushed off a cliff by a jealous local king, perhaps. His bones, Athenians believed, were lost for generations until brought back to Athens in a later era to rest in honor. But Theseus never left Athenian hearts. They worshipped him with a hero's cult, built him a shrine in the Agora, and invoked his name whenever they strove to unite and empower the people. After the age of heroes, the dawn mist of myth begins to lift, and we see Athens in simpler, mortal times. The monarchy persisted for a while, becoming more human and less divine. Eventually, tradition says, Athens' royal line ended with Codrus, a king of legendary self-sacrifice. When Dorian invaders threatened the city, the oracle at Delphi declared that Athens would be saved only if its king were to die for it. Codrus, hearing this, disguised himself and provoked the enemy, allowing himself to be killed. The Dorians, upon slaying him, either lost heart or believed the prophecy fulfilled and retreated. Thus Athens was spared. In reverence for Codrus' noble sacrifice, the Athenians swore none after him would be called king, for no one could match his valor. And so the monarchy gave way to a new system, leadership by elected archons from the noble families. It is now the dawn of historical time, roughly the 8th and 7th centuries BC. Aristocracy, the rule of the best-born, dominates Athens. Instead of one king, there are 9 archons chosen, initially for 10-year terms, later annually, from the noble clans, the Eupatridae, sons of good fathers. These archons divide kingly duties, one archon eponymous as chief magistrate, one archon basileus, overseeing sacred rites, a vestige of the old kingly priesthood, one polemarch commanding the army, and 6 thesmothetai handling judicial matters. Over them looms the Areopagus Council, named for the hill of Ares where it meets, a body of ex-archons and other nobles, gray-haired patriarchs who guard the laws and customs. They recall the judgments of legendary King Theseus or wise Pandion and shape new decrees in that spirit. For a while, this aristocratic rule seems to work. Life continues peacefully for those at the top. In a modest stone megaron, hall, atop the Acropolis where kings once sat, the archons now convene. Imagine an archon of that era. He steps out onto a colonnaded porch at dawn in a flowing white himation edged with purple. Below, in the waking city, he sees thin plumes of smoke rising from cook fires, hears roosters crow, and smells dawn's fresh dew on the breeze. In the courtyard, petitioners gather. A farmer respectfully bows and complains that a neighbor's goats strayed and ruined his young vines. A potter respectfully offers the archon a fine jug as he pleads for reduction of a tax. An old woman, perhaps a freed servant, petitions for intervention in a family dispute. The archon listens gravely. By his side stands an Areopagus elder, stroking his beard, reminding him of sacred law precedents. Remember Draco's Code on Property, or recall how we settled such a matter in the time of Archon Solon's father. The archon nods and pronounces a decision often favoring the noble or wealthy party, though cloaked in customary law. The petitioners accept or feign acceptance. There is no higher appeal. Beneath this aristocratic calm, however, the city's fabric strains. The noble families monopolize land, the best courts, and the army's leadership. Common farmers increasingly fall into debt to these nobles or their rich peers. When drought or poor harvests hit, a small farmer must borrow grain to feed his family, pledging his fields, and eventually his very person, as collateral. Many could not pay those loans in hard times, and the law set by the wealthy allowed creditors to seize the debtor's land and even enslave the debtor or his children to satisfy the debt. By the 7th century BC, Attica is dotted with stone pillars called horoi, staked in small farms, inscribed with notices of debt. The land and perhaps its owner are claimed by a creditor. These horoi stand like grim tombstones of freedom. It is said some Athenians were sold overseas as slaves by their lenders. Social strains are growing. The poor mutter in their modest clay brick homes that the rich have hearts of stone. The rich, in turn, fear the poor's resentment and guard their estates with hired toughs. Meanwhile, a new class of craftsmen and merchants is rising, especially in Athens' potter's quarter and at the busy port of Phaleron. They have wealth now. A potter like Keramikos can afford fine clothes and owns slaves to turn his wheels, but they have no voice in government, which galls them. Over cups of wine at dusk in the Agora's taverns, a merchant might gripe, "My ships trade to Egypt and back, yet that old Eupatrid in the council says I cannot vote because my great-grandfather wasn't a noble. What does lineage matter if I serve Athens with silver and grain?" These conversations are quiet, for speaking too boldly invites trouble from the archons, but the discontent is like a smoldering coal. By 621 BC, the unrest and confusion in Athens reach a point that even the aristocrats cannot ignore. The unequal application of oral law and the rising violence of feuds and revenge killings among the desperate threatens the city's stability. The nobles decide to appoint a lawgiver to write down the laws once and for all, to clarify justice, and perhaps quell the masses' complaints. They choose a fellow noble, a stern man named Draco. Draco becomes the first to inscribe Athenian law on wooden tablets for all to see. At first, people are relieved no more secret rules known only to judges. But as Draco's laws are read aloud in the Agora, relief turns to horror. Death is the penalty for theft, even a loaf of bread stolen out of hunger. Death for uprooting a neighbor's crops. Death for simple burglary. The crowd in the Agora that day falls into a stunned hush. A murmur spreads. These laws are written not in ink, but in blood. According to later legend, when asked why he set death as the punishment for most offenses, Draco replied, "Small crimes deserve it, and I know of no harsher penalty for the greater." Athenians shudder. The very word draconian will forever after mean unforgiving severity. Draco's code, for all its cruelty, does bring a certain brittle order. Crimes might indeed decrease for a time, out of sheer terror. But injustice is hardly cured. A debtor-turned-thief is now liable to be executed, hardly a solution to the roots of poverty. Resentment burns deeper, if quieter, and the aristocrats, secure that their property is now protected by the threat of extreme punishment, continue as before, still holding all office, still lending at interest, still collecting debts. Draco's laws treat symptoms, crime, with the harshest of remedies, but not the causes: hunger, inequality. Athens stands like a dry forest, outwardly quiet, inwardly primed for flames. Draco himself eventually fades into obscurity. An anecdote, perhaps apocryphal, claims he died in a theater on Aegina, showered by cloaks and hats thrown as applause until he smothered a darkly comic end. The lawgiver killed by an excess of honor, as if even in death his punishments were absurdly disproportionate. For what are cloaks if not soft, yet in multitude they suffocate. Regardless of the truth, Draco's name becomes a byword for merciless law. By the end of the 7th century, Athens stands at a precipice. Enter Solon, It is 594 BC, and the city, desperate to avert revolution, turns to a man of wisdom and moderation acceptable to all sides. Solon is a noble by birth, of the distinguished Cadrus line on his father's side, but he has shown sympathy for the common people and proven his brilliance. Some years earlier, Solon had won fame and trust by leading the Athenian effort to recapture the island of Salamis from Megara. Through a stratagem and stirring poetry he composed to inspire the troops, he took Salamis, and the people saw him as courageous and clever. He is also a noted poet and one of the so-called seven sages of Greece, known for his aphorisms and balanced judgment. When social tensions reached the breaking point, with some poor Athenians reportedly selling their children into slavery to pay debts, and talk of civil war in the air, Solon is chosen as archon and given extraordinary authority as a reformer to heal the city. Solon steps into the Agora, not with arms or harsh edicts, but with a poet's grace and a statesman's resolve. He immediately addresses the worst of Athens' sorrows, debt slavery, in an edict called the Seisachtheia, shaking off of burdens. Solon cancels all outstanding debts that touch freedom. The horoi stones that staked claim to peasant lands are torn up, and smashed teams of joyous farmers and their families yank them from the soil amid whoops and tears of relief. Those Athenians who had been enslaved or sold abroad for debt are freed and welcomed home. Solon uses state funds and perhaps his own wealth to buy back those sold overseas. The news spreads through Attica like sunrise light. On hill slopes and village squares, people embrace and cry out thanks to Zeus, Athena, and Solon. An old farmer, bent from years of hopeless labor, falls to his knees sobbing as his son sold 3 years ago to a trader returns home, thin but alive, no longer a slave, but a citizen again. The collective weight of bondage, economic and literal, is lifted. Athens heaves a great sigh of relief. Solon has, with one decree, freed a class of oppressed Athenians and averted imminent revolt. Next, Solon tackles the structure of power itself. He knows Draco's laws, aside from the homicide statutes, were too harsh, and the monopoly of offices by birth has bred resentment. Yet Solon is no radical equalizer. He seeks a balance that will satisfy the masses without utterly dispossessing the nobles. In Solon's new constitution, all free Athenian males are classified by wealth into 4 groups. At the top, the Pentakosio 500 measure men, whose estates yield at least 500 measures of grain, oil, or wine a year, essentially the very rich. Next, the Hippes, horsemen, who make 300 measures the affluent who can afford a war horse. Third, the Zeugitai, yokemen, at 200 measures the middle farmers who own a team of oxen. Lastly, the Thetes, under 200 measures the smallholders, laborers, and poor. Political privilege is then allocated by these classes. Only men of the top 2 classes may hold the highest offices, archonships and state treasurer positions. The third class, Zeugitai, become eligible for lower offices and can sit in a newly created Council of 400, which Solon establishes to set the assembly's agenda, with 100 members drawn from each of the old 4 tribes. And the fourth class, the Thetes previously wholly excluded, are granted the right to vote in the assembly and to serve as jurors in the popular courts. It is a watershed. Even the poorest Athenians now have a direct voice on laws and verdicts, though they cannot be elected archon. They wouldn't afford the time away from work anyway, in Solon's view. Solon essentially substitutes merit, as measured by production, for pure birth in political qualification, and even then ensures that everybody gets a say in the final sovereign body, the assembly. The city's reaction to Solon's political reform is mixed, but ultimately accepting. Many nobles chafe at losing exclusive grip on power, but they appreciate that Solon did not strip them of their lands or status. A rumored redivision of estates did not happen. Solon considered that too extreme and unjust. Meanwhile, the poor, though ecstatic to be rid of debt bondage, find that true land reform, their deeper need, did not occur. Some grumble that they gained freedom, but not sustenance. But most recognize the profound improvements Solon delivered. No Athenian will ever again legally chain a fellow citizen, and even a poor man now can stand in the assembly on Pnyx Hill and shout his approval or disapproval of policies a right unthinkable a generation prior. In Solon's own poetry, he wrote, "To the common people I gave just enough power, neither robbing them of dignity nor giving them license. To the wealthy and well-born I also gave their due, curbing their insolence and demanding their cooperation." In another elegy, he compares the state to a ship. He stands at the helm steady, restraining the overmighty and lifting up the downtrodden to prevent the vessel from capsizing. His reforms indeed steer Athens into calmer waters, at least for a time. Alongside the social and political overhaul, Solon revises laws broadly. Draco's draconian code is mostly repealed, save for the homicide laws. New, milder laws take their place. For example, lesser crimes might be punished by fines or exile rather than death. He proclaims laws against idleness and vain display. It's said he limited how much a family could spend on funerals to stop nobles from outdoing each other in ostentation, and encouraged fathers to teach sons a trade, even declaring that if a father failed to do so, the son was relieved of the legal duty to support that father in old age. Solon fixes standard weights and measures across Attica, aiding trade and mints new Athenian coinage of reliable purity. He forbids export of all agricultural produce except olive oil, to ensure the people are fed before cash crops are sold. In a stroke of pragmatic mercy, he grants amnesty to certain exiles and debtors, trying to heal old wounds. Solon the lawgiver becomes Solon the peacemaker. One can imagine an everyday scene shortly after Solon's reforms. In the Agora, under the shade of a newly built wooden colonnade, a herald reads out the new laws, since many citizens are illiterate, as a crowd of Athenians listens intently. A poor potter's eyes shine with hope, hearing that his vote in the assembly will count as much as anyone's. Beside him, a burly Zeugites farmer nods, hearing that he now qualifies to be on the Council of 400, perhaps hell-served next year, leaving his eldest son to mind the farm for a season. Meanwhile, a nobleman stands with arms crossed. He sighs he lost some privileges today, but he also hears the cheers around and knows that Athens was on the brink of revolt and that Solon likely saved them all. In the coming days, many will test these laws. Some disgruntled creditors might scheme to claw back what they lost, and some radicals might push for more. Indeed, later Athenians tell that in Solon's old age, some urged him to become a tyrant and redistribute all wealth, which he firmly refused. But for now, a balance holds. Solon is said to have made the citizens swear to abide by his laws for at least 10 years. Some sources say 100. Then, in a move characteristic of his wisdom, he leaves Athens for a while, traveling abroad so that no one can badger him into changing the laws to favor their faction. He visits Egypt, they say, and converses with priests in the city of Sais about ancient lore. He visits Lydia and meets the world's richest king, Croesus, advising him, when asked about happiness, that human fortunes are fickle and one must see an entire life before judging it blessed, a lesson Croesus would later painfully appreciate. These travels remove Solon from the day-to-day squabbles of Athens and force the Athenians to live under his system without leaning on its author. Athens, for a brief golden interlude, enjoys relative peace and recovery. Freed debt slaves rebuild their lives. Moderate prosperity returns as trade and agriculture improve under fairer laws. The common folk, tasting political participation, begin to take pride in the city as never before. An Athenian farmer now might say, "This is my polis," with a sense of ownership, whereas in the past he might have said it was the noble city or the king's city. And yet, fault lines remain. Old aristocratic families still feel they deserve to lead and resent upstarts. Poor citizens, having lifted the boulder of debt off their backs, now cast their eyes on the still vast estates of the nobles and wonder if more could be done. It isn't long before new factions form. Pisistratus, a charismatic noble and war hero, emerges championing the hill people, the poorer Athenians of the uplands, against the men of the plain, the old landowning nobility, and coast, the traders and moderate nobles. Even as an official archon or general, Pisistratus courts popular favor. He speaks of further easing the people's lot, and seems unthreatening to the reforms indeed. He claims to uphold Solon's system, but improve its execution. Within 2 decades of Solon's retirement, Athens finds itself sliding back into factional strife. The rich accuse the poor of being never satisfied. The poor accuse the rich of subverting the new laws. The moderate leadership vacillates. Solon, far away, hears rumblings that his city may again tip into chaos or tyranny. By 560 BC, when Solon has passed, or is in extreme old age, events prove him prescient. Pisistratus stages a coup, albeit a cleverly bloodless one. Feigning an attempt on his life, he convinces the assembly to grant him a bodyguard, then uses those armed followers to seize the Acropolis. Suddenly, Athens has a tyrant again. Pisistratus takes power, not abolishing Solon's laws, he keeps them as a facade, but bending the government to his will. He doesn't execute Solon's constitution, he wears it like a ceremonial robe while ruling by force behind the scenes. This begins the next chapter of Athens' Story 1 of Tyranny's interlude on the path to democracy. Pisistratus will rule, be exiled, return, be exiled again, and return triumphant to hold Athens in a firm but at first gentle grip. In his rule's paradox, Athens will actually flourish in many ways. It will know peace and prosperity that make the memory of strife fade. But the Athenians have not forgotten Solon's ideals, and the flame of freedom smolders under the surface. In the quiet of an Athenian night under Pisistratus's tyranny, perhaps an old man whispers a prayer to Athena, thanking her for deliverance from debt, but asking in the same breath that she not forget her city's promise of liberty. That promise will rise again after the tyrant's fall, brighter and bolder than even Solon could imagine. Pisistratus, the tyrant of Athens. Across the gentle slope of the Pnyx hill, morning sunlight casts long shadows of men, gathering once again, but now not for free assembly debate, rather for a spectacle of politics driven by personality and cunning. It is the mid-6th century BC. Athens has weathered Solon's reforms, but the seas are choppy once more. Pisistratus, charismatic kinsman of Solon and general of the hillsmen, sees his opportunity amid the factional squalls. He is a man of noble blood, but with a populist's touch, one hand grasping the aristocratic traditions and the other extended warmly to the common citizens. Pisistratus first enters the city's political stage as a war hero. Some years after Solon, Athens fought a brief war with Megara over the island of Salamis. Solon's old victory had to be defended, and Pisistratus distinguished himself by capturing a Megarian outpost. Later, he led Athenian forces against raiding neighbors and showed personal valor. These exploits win him the love of the demos. In the Agora, people speak admiringly of young Pisistratus. He goes about accompanied not by haughty guards, but by a few close friends. He greets farmers by name at market, inquires kindly after their sick children, shares a joke with a potter about the latest vase design. To the poor and middling folk, Pisistratus feels like one of them, despite his high birth. And importantly, he speaks their language. He bemoans how some of Solon's good work has stalled, how the men of the plain, the great landowners led by families like the Lycurgids, still dominate the courts and offices, how the men of the coast, wealthy traders led by clans like the Alcmaeonids, squabble with them while the needs of humble hill farmers are forgotten. Pisistratus positions himself as champion of the men of the hills, the poor farmers and shepherds of inland Attica, as well as the urban laborers who feel left out. His chance comes in 561 BC. One fine day, the Athenians are jolted by cries from the direction of the Stoa. Pisistratus appears in the Agora, his tunic torn and blood staining his skin. He claims that rival aristocrats' enemies of the people attacked him on the road. Indeed, he bears wounds, self-inflicted, whispers later suggest, and looks every bit the victim of political violence. Outrage ripples through the crowd of farmers, craftsmen, and sailors present. "Look what the powerful have done to our hero," someone shouts. "Shame, he protected us in war, and they stab him in peace." A surge of sympathetic anger courses through the assembly. Under this emotional cloud, a proposal is made. Grant Pisistratus a bodyguard of 50 club-armed men for his protection. Who could oppose such a reasonable request? Not the Plains Party. Openly they would seem to condone assassination. And the assembly, fired by affection and pity, approves it overwhelmingly. Now Pisistratus has a private force. In short order, he makes his move. On a certain morning, when many nobles are away or unsuspecting, Pisistratus and his loyal guards seize the Acropolis, Athens' citadel. They occupy the halls where the archons meet and secure the treasury. By the time the general populace realizes what has happened, Pisistratus has taken control of the city without spilling a drop of Athenian blood. It is a coup, smoothly executed behind a facade of legality. At first, confusion and nervous quiet prevail in Athens. Some expect Pisistratus to start arresting opponents or announcing sweeping changes. But he does something shrewder. He leaves Solon's institutions largely intact. Archons continue to be elected, though only those he approves tend to win. The Council of 400 meets, staffed with many of his supporters. The assembly convenes, but only to ratify decisions he has prearranged. To the average Athenian waking up the next day, life looks much as before. No soldiers in the streets harassing them, no abrupt edicts. The difference is subtle decisions now funnel through one man. Pisistratus's first rule is short. The old factions of plain and coast, stunned but not defeated, regroup. The aristocrats unite under leaders like Megacles of the Alcmaeonids and Lycurgus of another noble house. Within a few years, through a combination of armed pressure and political negotiation, they force Pisistratus into exile. Perhaps on an uneasy summer night, faced with superior forces and the risk of civil war, Pisistratus chooses to slip away rather than fight fellow Athenians. Athens breathes a sigh of relief. The old order, they think, is restored. But Pisistratus bides his time. In exile, he gathers wealth and allies. The factions in Athens soon resume bickering with each other. Before long, maybe 556 BC, the Alcmaeonid leader Megacles, tiring of his alliance with Lycurgus, secretly invites Pisistratus back and even offers him his daughter's hand in marriage to seal a new partnership. Pisistratus, ever opportunistic, agrees. They stage a spectacle almost comical for its audacity. Pisistratus returns to Athens riding in a chariot beside a tall woman dressed as the goddess Athena. As they roll into town, heralds proclaim, "Athena herself brings Pisistratus home." Many country folk and credulous city dwellers in that pious age accept or at least play along with this divine theater. With minimal resistance, Pisistratus re-enters the Acropolis amid curious cheers. The tyrant is back now as the son-in-law of Megacles, apparently reconciled with part of the nobility. This second tenure is also short-lived. The alliance between Pisistratus and Megacles sours. Private matters in heir and marital discord breed mistrust. Once again, factions shift. The plains and coast nobles band together anew. Pisistratus finds himself pressured out a second time. Off he goes into exile, but not defeated in spirit. For nearly 10 years, Pisistratus travels, gathers funds, he exploits mines in Thrace, courts friends among other tyrants, and even at foreign courts. All the while, in Athens, the aristocratic parties rule shakily, and the commons, though not persecuted, grow weary of elite feuds and yearn for the stability and prosperity they glimpsed under Pisistratus. Finally, in 546 BC, Pisistratus makes his decisive move. With an army of mercenaries and local supporters, he lands on the Attic coast. The Athenian government's forces meet him on the plain of Pallene. But through cunning or a sudden sally at noon, one story says Pisistratus attacked during the enemy's midday rest. He routs them. As fleeing anti-tyrant hoplites scatter, Pisistratus famously does not pursue vengeance. He has his sons call out to the fleeing, "Return home in peace." Many do, surprised and relieved not to be cut down. This clemency sways wavering hearts, better a ruler who shows mercy in victory than vindictive oligarchs. Now Pisistratus is master of Athens for the long run. He consolidates his power carefully, disarming disloyal factions, perhaps taking hostages from prominent families and maintaining a personal guard of trusted Thracian soldiers. The city, exhausted by chaos, largely acquiesces. Thus begins a period remembered as relatively calm and prosperous, the tyranny of Pisistratus, which paradoxically sets the stage for Athens' golden age to come. Now, Athens under Pisistratus is a study in gentle authoritarianism. Pisistratus knows that to last, he must keep the people content. So he rules not by fear alone, though the threat is implicit, but through benevolence and patronage. He reduces taxes on small farmers. In some cases, he outright gives seed grain or farming tools to impoverished villages. There's a charming anecdote. Pisistratus once encountered a farmer working a miserably rocky plot on Mount Hymettus. Seeing only sparse weeds, the tyrant asked what the yield was. The farmer, not realizing to whom he spoke, quipped in despair, "Nothing but stones, and even those I pay as taxes to Pisistratus." Amused and moved, the story goes, Pisistratus exempted that man from taxes, proving he could take a joke and had a heart for hardship. True or apocryphal, such tales circulate, building Pisistratus's image as a fair-minded ruler who cares for the common man. He also invests in infrastructure and worship. Under his direction, Athens sees its first major aqueducts and fountain houses built fresh water flows conveniently in the Agora at the beautiful Enniakrounos, 9 Spouts Fountain. Women no longer have to trek to wells far outside the city. A young mother drawing water at the fountain can thank Father Pisistratus for the clean stream that eases her day. Roads are improved, facilitating trade and communication across Attica. Pisistratus begins grand building projects that later will bloom fully under his sons and then Pericles. He lays foundations for a great temple of Zeus Olympios south of the Acropolis, envisioning Athens adorned with monumental architecture. Culturally, his regime is vibrant. Pisistratus is a patron of the arts and religion, aware that shared cultural pride knits people to his rule. He institutionalizes the Panathenaic festival as a spectacular quadrennial event with athletic games, musical contests, and processions. Under his patronage, perhaps, the first tragedies are performed at the city Dionysia festival. We can imagine in the springtime, under the southern slope of the Acropolis, thousands gathering in the open-air theater of Dionysus. There, for the first time, an actor like Thespis steps forward from the chorus and enacts a role drama. Is born supported by Pisistratus's grant of prizes for playwrights. The people are enthralled by stories of gods and heroes acted out before them. A communal catharsis binds them courtesy of the tyrant's cultured generosity. Another lasting contribution, Pisistratus reputedly commissioned a standardized text of Homer's epics. The Iliad and Odyssey, which were recited piecemeal by bards, are compiled and edited in Athens under his order. He has them recited in full at the Panathenaic Games. Thus, Athenians of all classes share the Homeric songs as a common heritage, and Athens gains renown as a center of literary tradition. Imagine a quiet evening in the Agora, a blind rhapsode chanting verses of Achilles' wrath to a circle of spellbound listeners, perhaps a young Socrates among them, the performance funded by the state. Many such fruits of peace and stability ripen under Pisistratus. Economically, Athens thrives. Trade expands. Athenian painted pottery becomes a major export. carrying images of Athena and Theseus to far-flung markets. The city's olive oil, stored in graceful black figure amphorae, is shipped to ports around the Aegean and Mediterranean. The tyrant encourages this, establishing alliances or at least friendly ties with other rulers, even the king of Lydia or tyrants of Ionia. He secures ample grain import routes and perhaps quietly plants colonies or garrisons in strategic places. The chroniclers mention he seized the Thracian Chersonese for its rich farmlands and control of trade through the Hellespont. All this ensures that Athens' population growing now is fed and employed. By 528 BC, when Pisistratus dies peacefully in old age, many Athenians, especially among the poor, genuinely mourn him. He is laid to rest with honor. His sons Hippias and Hipparchus peacefully assume power jointly, maintaining their father's system. At first, the transition is smooth. Hippias, the elder, is a bit reserved and administrative. Hipparchus is affable and artistic. They continue the festivals and public works. They invite poets like Anacreon and Simonides to grace Athens with their verses and commission new statues of gods and heroes. The city hums contentedly if one is not too bothered by having no real democracy. One might say these are good times. But over the years, the nature of tyranny begins to change. Hippias grows wary and severe. The burden of absolute rule and fear of losing it twist his character toward suspicion. The killing blow to this benign tyranny comes with a personal tragedy. In 514 BC, Hipparchus, the younger brother, becomes embroiled in a private quarrel with two Athenian citizens, Harmodius, a beautiful youth, and Aristogeiton, his lover, a man of middle age. When Harmodius spurns the romantic overtures of Hipparchus, the offended prince insults Harmodius' family publicly, forbidding his sister to carry a ritual basket in the Panathenaic procession, claiming she isn't virgin or pure enough. This public shaming enrages Harmodius and Aristogeiton. They quietly plot revenge not only for honor, but to strike at the tyrants they now hate. During the next Panathenaic festival, while Athenians are celebrating in the streets, Harmodius and Aristogeiton seize their chance. Swords hidden under ceremonial myrtle wreaths, they make for Hipparchus. In the chaos of the crowded procession near the Leocorium, a sacred precinct, they manage to stab Hipparchus to death. Harmodius is cut down on the spot by guards. Aristogeiton escapes momentarily into the screaming throng, but is soon captured. The city is stunned, one of the Pisistratids murdered in broad daylight amidst Athena's holy festival. Hippias' reaction transforms the tyranny. Grief-stricken and enraged, he tightens the reins brutally. Aristogeiton is tortured and executed. Many noble families, suspected of sympathy with the assassins, are exiled or harshly watched. Hippias no longer trusts the public or the remaining nobles. He fortifies the Acropolis, surrounds himself with foreign mercenaries, and imposes stricter controls on gatherings and expression. His once mild countenance turns grim. The people whisper that cruel Hippias now rules. Whatever fondness common Athenians had for the Pisistratids evaporates. Harmodius and Aristogeiton, though personally motivated, instantly become martyrs of liberty in the public imagination. Their names are sung in secret toasts. Some dare carve verses honoring them on walls at night. The Athenians increasingly see these tyrant slayers as heroes who did what everyone longed to do: strike down the oppressor. The oppression itself, by modern measures, might still be considered moderate. Hippias doesn't conduct mass slaughter or anything, but for Athenians, proud of Solon's legacy, the spell of the tyranny is broken. Hippias, paranoid, begins executing or exiling even minor threats. Taxes might creep upward to pay for more bodyguards. Commerce stagnates under the climate of fear and suspicion. The city holds its breath. Finally, in 510 BC, external forces intervene. The exiled Alcmaeonid family, kin to Megacles and including Cleisthenes, an astute statesman, have been lobbying Sparta for help. By bribing the Delphic oracle, which starts telling the Spartans at every consultation, "Liberate Athens," They succeed in spurring King Cleomenes of Sparta to act. The Spartans invade Attica to free Athens from tyranny. After a brief siege on the Acropolis, Hippias agrees to terms when his children are taken hostage by the Spartans. He steps down. The once powerful tyrant, last of his house, is escorted out of Athens with his family into exile. He will end up in distant Persia as a pensioner at the great king's court. As Hippias departs, a great shout of joy rises in Athens. The tyranny of 36 years, since Pisistratus' first coup, is ended. Freedom! Athenians surge into the streets. They decorate the Agora with wreaths. No longer fearful, they sing the praises of Harmodius and Aristogeiton openly, calling them tyrannophonoi, the tyrant killers, saviors of Athens. For the first time in Greek history, the city commissions and erects in the Agora bronze statues of mere mortals a pair of sculptures of Harmodius and Aristogeiton brandishing swords. Later, these will be stolen by the Persians and then replaced, but for now they stand gleaming, a bold statement. In Athens, the people honor those who gave them back their liberty, not just gods or kings. The year is now 508 BC. Athens stands at a crossroads, brimming with possibility. The hated tyrants are gone. But the path isn't yet clear. Will the old noble oligarchy simply resume control? Or will the common Athenians, who tasted a share in governance under Solon and had that memory kept alive by their hatred of tyranny, demand power for themselves? The answer comes swiftly, propelled by a leader from that very Alcmaeonid family, Cleisthenes, who grasps that a new order must be founded, one that permanently secures the people's role in government and prevents any tyrant or narrow clique from dominating again. Cleisthenes will usher in the true birth of democratia, power of the people. As Athens jubilantly celebrates its liberation, Cleisthenes quietly begins canvassing support among the citizens for his ideas. Crowds gather on the Pnyx Hill, not for show, but for authentic debate. And Cleisthenes, speaking with fervor, says, "We will remake Athens so that all Athenians share in her." The demos, the people cheer this sentiment to the skies. That night, beneath the Acropolis, where Athena's olive tree whispers in the breeze, Athenians sleep excited, a bit anxious, but mostly hopeful. They have broken their chains. Now they will build a new society from the foundations of their unity and thirst for freedom. The early days of democracy, true and full, are about to dawn. Cleisthenes and the birth of democracy. It is 508 BC. The sun rises over Athens to find a city in flux, trembling on the edge of a new era. Into the bustling Agora strides Cleisthenes of the Alcmaeonids, the man who will be known as the father of Athenian democracy. Cleisthenes is a noble by birth, but he has thrown in his lot with the people. He saw with his own eyes how the Athenians, common and noble together, overthrew the Spartans and Isagoras when those oligarchs tried to hijack the city after Hippias' fall. He understands that the will of the people, once awakened, can be an irresistible force and, if guided wisely, the true source of Athens' strength. In an extraordinary move, Cleisthenes proposes to fundamentally reorder Athenian society along civic rather than kinship lines. "I am going to make every Athenian free and equal in power by breaking the power of old factions," he essentially declares. And he does so through a brilliant design of new institutions. First, Cleisthenes abolishes the old four tribes of Athens, ancient divisions that were basically large family, clans dominated by nobles. In their place, he creates 10 new tribes, and these are geographic and social mixtures deliberately. He divides Attica into 3 regions, city, coast, and inland, and further into 30 local sections called trities. Each tribe will consist of 3 trities, one from the city, urban Athens, and immediate suburbs, one from the coast, the shores and islands like Salamis, and one from inland, the farming villages of the plains and hills. By this stroke, people who used to identify as, say, man of the hills or man of the coast are now fused into the same tribe with those from other regions. An aristocrat from a fertile plain village finds himself in the same tribe as a poor charcoal burner from the mountains and a boat builder from the port. Their tribal name, perhaps tribe of Erechtheus or tribe of Athena's owl, each tribe is named after a local hero, now binds them together. Alongside this, Cleisthenes strengthens the concept of the local community, or deme. Each neighborhood of Athens, each rural village, about 139 demes, in all becomes the basic unit of political life. Men register as citizens by their deme, not by their father's name. Even the way Athenians introduce themselves changes. Formerly, one might say, "I am Aristocles, son of Xanthippus, of the Alcmaeonid clan." Now he would say, "I am Aristocles of Alopec," naming his deme. It's a quiet revolution in identity. One's polis and place, not one's parentage, is foremost. Loyalty shifts. Athenians begin to think of themselves not as belonging to a noble's network or an old clan, but as members of a local community and a tribe that spans diverse communities. Next, Cleisthenes tackles the heart of governance. He reforms the old council of 400 into a new council of 550 members from each of the 10 tribes, chosen by lot annually. By random lot, fishermen, farmers, blacksmiths from the top 3 economic classes initially find themselves seated in the Bouleuterion council hall alongside aristocrats and merchants, discussing and preparing laws. Because members are selected by lot, wealth or birth provides no guaranteed entry. It's a wide sample of citizens, a microcosm of the people. And the council is in constant flux. Each tribe's 50 serve as the Prytany, executive committee, for 1/10 of the year, ensuring all tribes, and thus all regions, get a turn at the helm. Within each Prytany, one man is chosen by lot each day to act as chairman, literally the man in charge of Athens for that day. Every dawn, a new citizen sleeps in the tholos, roundhouse, on duty to receive any urgent message, wearing the mantle of state for just his brief span. Then he becomes a regular counselor again. It is dizzyingly egalitarian and prevents any small clique from long dominion over the city's daily affairs. With the Council of 500 setting the agenda, the assembly, ecclesia, becomes the ultimate sovereign power. Now meeting on the Pnyx Hill perhaps every 10 days, it is open to all male citizens, 18 or older, including Thetes, the poorest class, who Solon had allowed to vote, but whose influence was previously minimal. In this assembly, laws are debated and voted, war declared, ostracisms decided, the people deliberate and decide. Cleisthenes ensures the assembly's decisions cannot be easily overridden by any other body. The Areopagus Council will largely be left with only minor judicial and religious oversight roles. The radical notion is that on the Pnyx, under the open sky, an Athenian stands not as noble or common, but as citizen, with an equal vote to any other. A nobleman's polished rhetoric might carry persuasion, but so might a clever phrase from a rough-spoken dockworker. It's the collective judgment by majority that matters. To guard against the rise of another tyrant, Cleisthenes reputedly introduces ostracism. Once a year, the assembly can choose to hold an ostracism. If agreed, some weeks later, citizens gather and scratch a name on pottery shards ostraca of the man they think is most dangerous to the state. If any man's name appears on enough shards, typically at least 6,000, he is exiled for 10 years with no further penalty. His family and property are not harmed. This is a bloodless expulsion of potential threats, a kind of safety valve. It will soon claim even illustrious figures, proving that under the new democracy, no one is above the suspicion and power of the people. Cleisthenes' reforms also subtly change how Athenians think of justice and authority. Public lawsuits can now be initiated by any citizen, not just an injured party, reflecting that wrongs are against society, not just individuals. Large juries of citizens, selected by lot, will decide cases, not archons alone. And indeed, the first use of many of these mechanisms comes swiftly. A famous anecdote a generation later highlights the ethos. During the ostracism of Aristides the Just, a revered general, an illiterate farmer, not recognizing the dignified man next to him is Aristides himself, asks him for help writing Aristides on his ostracon. Aristides, with a faint smile, asks why the fellow wants Aristides ostracized. The man says gruffly, "I am tired of hearing him called the Just. Everywhere I suppose he's no better than me." Without protest, Aristides writes his own name on the shard and hands it back. Aristides is indeed ostracized that year, sent away by the will of ordinary citizens who, whether out of envy or caution, decided that even such a virtuous man should not remain in Athens. That little scene, a common farmer dictating the fate of a great noble hero, and that noble quietly acquiescing to the majorities, will captures the spirit of Cleisthenes democracy. Prestige and power bow to the judgment of the collective. Cleisthenes himself does not become a leader for life. In fact, after instituting these reforms, Cleisthenes fades into the background. Some say he served as an ordinary counselor, perhaps an archon once, but he did not make himself tyrant of his own revolution. The city now had the institutions to govern itself, and quickly they would be tested. Barely 2 years after the reforms in 506 BC, Athens faces an existential threat. The Spartan king Cleisthenes, smarting from his failed attempt to dominate Athens, returns leading a Peloponnesian force. Simultaneously, Thebes attacks from the northwest and Chalcis from across the strait, a coordinated assault by oligarchic powers to squash the upstart democracy. Under the new tribal system, Athens marshals her hoplites by tribe. 10 tribal regiments take the field under generals, one elected from each tribe, a new office called strategos that the democracy introduced to replace the old polemarch singular generalship. In the first encounter, Athenians defeat Cleomenes' Spartans, reportedly because some of Cleomenes' allies lost heart, maybe hearing of the Athenians' unity, or due to some bribes by Cleisthenes. Legends vary. Cleomenes retreats in confusion. Then Athens turns north and routs the Thebans and Chalcidians on the same day, a double victory. The returning democratic army brings hundreds of captured suits of armor dedicated on the Acropolis in thanks to Athena. In a bold step, Athens sends 4,000 of its poor citizens to settle on Euboea, on lands confiscated from Chalcidian oligarchs, an act providing those citizens farms, solving poverty, and securing strategic territory. It is a sign the energy unleashed by democracy makes Athens not just secure, but boldly expansionist and confident. Now the Athenians truly begin to feel the power of their collective. They have faced foreign foes without aristocratic or tyrannical rule, and they have prevailed. Athens has become a school of unity and self-reliance. Within a generation, a man like the historian Herodotus will write that Athens, under freedom, proved much stronger than under tyrants, attributing it to each citizen's zeal when fighting for his own political community. With external threats beaten off and Cleisthenes' system taking root, Athens enters a new dawn. The city is now unmistakably in the hands of its citizens. Walk through the Agora in 500 BC, and one sees all classes mingling on more equal footing. At the Tribal Heroes Monument, a set of 10 bronze statues erected in the Agora citizens crowd around daily to read notices posted by each tribe's officials. Announcements of new laws, upcoming trials, war news. One day, the list of names of newly chosen council members is pinned up, and a humble potter beams to see his name. He will serve as counselor for the tribe Leontis next year, leaving his workshop to help govern Athens. Elsewhere, at a smithy shop, the talk over lunch is not just of prices of charcoal, but of who might be ostracized this year. I think Xanthippus is getting too arrogant. Maybe it's time to scratch his name, one suggests. Laughter, then a serious nod. Politics has become the pastime and passion of the ordinary man. In a shady corner of the Agora, a small group of wealthy aristocrats still gripe quietly. One says, "The city is in the hands of fishermen and shield makers. Where will it end?" Another, more far-sighted, answers, perhaps greatness. See how the Persians fared against us. Indeed, already the democratic Athens is looking outward. They have sent aid to the Ionian Greeks in a dare against the mighty Persian Empire, an act unthinkable under timid tyranny. And the Persian king Darius, outraged, has scribes etch Athens on his waxboard of enemies to punish. A confrontation with the East looms, one that will test the very mettle of this new democracy. But for now, as dusk falls, Athens is at peace. On the Pnyx hillside, the assembly has dispersed after a long day's debate on building new triremes for the fleet. Torches bob in the twilight as citizens head home, still arguing cheerfully in twos and threes about the vote. In a modest house in the den of Colytus, a young boy asks his father, "What did you do today?" The father, a carpenter, tiredly smiles and says, "I cast my vote in the assembly. We decided to strengthen our walls and our navy. When you're grown, you'll have your say too. We all shape our city now." The mother pours diluted wine for them and adds quietly, "Just as Athena intended, I think. The gods watch over us all equally." In the quiet Acropolis under the stars, the olive tree of Athena stands silvery in the moonlight. Beside it now are new marble altars and shrines built by the people's contributions. The air is calm. These are the early days of democracy in Athens, hopeful, dynamic, sometimes messy, but undeniably alive with the spirit of a people who have discovered their collective strength. The city slumbers, free and full of dreams, awaiting the challenges and glories the coming years will bring Marathon and Salamis, the dawning of an empire, the age of Pericles. But tonight, in this gentle darkness, we linger in the moment of Athens' first steps as a democracy, the soft chorus of its many voices blending into a lullaby of freedom. The Persian Wars. Democracy tested by fire. The bright experiment of Athenian democracy soon faces a fearsome external challenge. In the distance, like storm clouds gathering at the edges of a summer sky, looms the vast Persian Empire, a realm ruled by a great king who tolerates no independent cities on his borders. Athens' bold support for the Ionian Greeks' revolt in 499 BC has drawn the wrath of King Darius. By 490 BC, Persian messengers arrive in Greece demanding tokens of submission, earth, and water. Many Greek cities quail and comply, but Athens, freshly conscious of its liberty, votes defiantly to refuse. In the assembly, ordinary citizens like that carpenter from Colytus stand up and say, "We will fight for our freedom." They remember what it was to overthrow one tyrant at home. They will not bow to a tyrant abroad. And so the storm breaks. In the late summer of 490 BC, a Persian armada lands on the sands of Marathon, a plain northeast of Athens. The Athenians muster their citizen army of hoplites. They send a herald, Phaedipides, running a miraculous distance to Sparta to beg aid. The runner covers about 150 miles in 2 days. En route, legend says, he encounters the god Pan in a lonely mountain glen. Pan, the rustic god of wild places, calls out, asking why the Athenians have neglected his worship. If they honor him henceforth, he promises to sow panic in the Persian hearts. Phaedipides returns to Athens after Sparta delays, citing a religious festival, with that strange encouragement: Pan is with us. The Athenians, inspired, vow to build Pan a shrine if they prevail. On the plain of Marathon, under the bright sky, some 10,000 Athenian hoplites and 1,000 Plataean allies line up to face perhaps 25,000 Persians, formidable archers and cavalry of the largest empire on earth. The Athenian general Miltiades urges immediate attack. At dawn, the Athenians charge at a run, bronze shields and helmets glinting, pounding the earth with their sandaled feet. The Persians, expecting an easy fight, are stunned by the Greeks' audacity. The two armies clash in dust and screams. Initially, the Persian center pushes the Greeks back by sheer weight of numbers, but the Greek wings, stronger, break the Persian flanks and then encircle the invaders. Amidst the din, Athenian hoplites press relentlessly with their wall of shields and 8-foot spears. A panic, perhaps Pan-sent, seizes the Persian line. They break and begin to run for their ships. The Athenians give chase, exultant. By day's end, 6,400 Persians lie dead on the field for a loss of only 192 Athenians. Athens has won one of history's most against-the-odds victories. A messenger, perhaps the same Pheidippides, races the 26 miles back to Athens. According to later legend, he bursts into the assembly, gasps "Nenikakamen," "We have won," and collapses in death from exhaustion. True or not, the impact is as if a god had shouted the news from Olympus. Athens is saved. Freemen have defeated the slaves of a king. On the battlefield, the Athenians bury their fallen comrades in a proud tumulus. No Athenian will ever be enslaved, even in death, on Persian soil. They then march the same day back to Athens, where the Persian fleet now approaches the coast. But seeing the gleaming Athenian army miraculously returned and ready, the Persians withdraw. Shortly after, Sparta's troops arrive, too late to fight, and marvel at the courage of this city that dared face the Mede alone. From that day, Athenians walk a little taller. In thanks for Pan's help, for many swear the enemy was seized by unreasoning terror at a crucial moment, they establish a sanctuary to Pan under the Acropolis and honor him each year with torch-lit dances. They also dedicate a pair of trophies, captured Persian weapons and armor, to Zeus and Athena. The name Marathon becomes legendary. The Athenians are wise enough to know the Persians will return. They prepare. In 483 BC, a rich vein of silver is struck in the state mines at Laurion in southern Attica. The assembly debates what to do with this windfall. Many citizens clamor to distribute it as a dividend. But Themistocles, an archon with keen foresight, persuades them to invest it in building a mighty fleet of triremes, sleek wooden warships with 3 banks of oars. He invokes the oracle of Delphi, which recently prophesied that only a wooden wall shall defend Athens. Themistocles argues passionately that this wooden wall means a wall of ships. His silver-tongued arguments win over the people. Not without difficulty, Aristides the Just opposes him, preferring to strengthen the army, leading to Aristides' ostracism for obstructing Themistocles' naval policy. The Athenians commit the Laurian silver to build 200 triremes. It is a momentous decision. The poorest citizens, the Thetes who will row these ships, become the backbone of Athens' defense, further knitting them into the democracy's core. By 480 BC, King Xerxes, son of Darius, launches a vast invasion of Greece to avenge Marathon and conquer the Greeks. The Athenians and Spartans, now allied, make a stand at Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans and others heroically delay the Persians, and Artemisium, where Athenian ships fight a drawn-out holding action at sea. When Thermopylae is overrun, the road to Athens lies open. The Athenians, at Themistocles' urging, evacuate the entire populace of the city, a wrenching decision. In early September, one can see a sorrowful procession of women, children, and the elderly winding down to the port of Phaleron, carrying what valuables and keepsakes they can, boarding boats to the nearby island of Salamis or to Troezen in the Peloponnese for refuge. Athene's statues are carefully lifted and ferried away, but many lesser sanctuaries and homes are left behind, entrusted to the gods. Xerxes' gargantuan army enters an almost empty Athens. On a late summer day, from their ships moored off Salamis, the evacuated Athenians watch with tears and rage as black smoke billows from the Acropolis. Xerxes has set fire to their temples, even the ancient olive tree of Athena charred. Though, in a sign of hope, next morning they find its stump sprouting a fresh green shoot. Athens itself homes workshops is torched systematically. The Persian king believes this will break the Greek spirit. Instead, it galvanizes them. In the Bay of Salamis soon occurs one of history's great naval battles. Themistocles cunningly lures Xerxes' fleet into the narrow straits by sending a secret message falsely claiming the Greeks' plan to slip away. Xerxes, eager to finish the war, takes the bait and orders his navy in to block the escape. At dawn, 370 Greek triremes, a third of them Athenian, face perhaps 600 Persian warships jamming the straits. Xerxes watches from a throne on a hill above the shore, expecting a quick victory. Instead, he sees a disaster unfold. The heavier, less coordinated Persian ships cannot maneuver properly in the constricted waters. Greek triremes, rowed furiously by citizen oarsmen shouting, "Elelu," charge with their bronze rams. They smash holes in Persian hulls left and right. An Athenian captain, Amanius, spears the flagship of the Phoenician squadron. An explosion of cheers erupts on the Greek side. Xerxes' admirals attempt retreat, but Themistocles' strategy and the Greeks' fervor have encircled them. By dusk, hundreds of Persian ships are sunk or captured, their wreckage littering the bay, while the Greeks lose only a few dozen. On the shore, Xerxes, furious and afraid that the Greeks might sail to the Hellespont to cut off his retreat, soon withdraws with the bulk of his army back to Asia, leaving a general Mardonius with a smaller force to continue the war. As night falls after the Battle of Salamis, the exhausted Greek sailors Athenians, Spartans, Corinthians, Aeginetans gather on the shores of Salamis around campfires. Among them, the Athenians have the most to be proud of. Their naval policy, their ships, their courage were central to this triumph. It's noted by all that democracy's child, the Athenian navy, won the day. Even Aristides, recalled from ostracism in the emergency, has to admit Themistocles' strategy saved Greece. In the flickering firelight, some Athenians sing the paean to Athena. Others simply sit silently, knowing their beloved city lies in ruins across the water, but swearing it shall rise again. The war isn't over. The next year, on the slopes of Plataea, the remaining Persian army is decisively defeated by a united Greek force, led by Sparta on land, with Athens supporting, while on the same day, Athenian ships help destroy the remnants of the Persian navy at Mycale. After Plataea, 479 BC, Greek victory is complete. Notably, the Athenians under Pausanias, Spartan regent, and Aristides insist on respectful treatment of allies and piety toward the gods. Athenians dedicate a serpent column of captured Persian bronze at Delphi, listing all Greek cities that fought with Athens proudly among the first. With the Persian threat gone, the Athenians, many returning to the blackened ruins of their city, set about rebuilding Athens. Themistocles, cunning as ever, persuades the Spartans, who object to any fortifications, fearing a future Persian return, to allow Athens to wall itself anew by stalling them with diplomacy, while Athenians of all ages feverishly raise the city walls higher with rubble and broken statues. When the Spartans realize the walls are built, it's a fait accompli. Athens is now a fortress of freedom, not to be bullied easily again. Athens then takes the lead of a new coalition, the Delian League, founded in 477 BC on the sacred Isle of Delos. Ostensibly to carry the war to Persia's remaining territories and secure Greek freedom, it quickly becomes an Athenian-led naval empire. Many Greek islands and cities in the Aegean, grateful to Athens and aware of her naval supremacy, become members, contributing ships or money. The League's treasury is eventually moved from Delos to Athens for safekeeping, 454 BC, and with it flows enormous wealth into the city. It is now the mid-5th century BC, and Athens stands at the dawn of an era of unparalleled glory, culturally and politically. Democracy, matured through war and League leadership, is about to blossom in full under the guidance of Pericles and others. The city that was once humbled under tyrants and threatened by empires is now the preeminent power of the Greek world. Its citizens know it too. They carry themselves with confident bearing. A visitor in 460 BC might see an Athenian farmer point out to his son the charred remains of a column on the Acropolis and say, "See that? The Persians burned our old temple. We will raise a grander one, And indeed they will. The Parthenon is soon to rise. For Athens' democracy, the Persian Wars were a trial by fire that forged unity, resolve, and pride. The poorest citizen could feel as vital as the richest in those battles. The rower knew his oar won Salamis as much as the general's strategy did. In the assembly after the wars, reforms are passed, spearheaded by Ephialtes and Pericles, that open even archonships to all classes and pay citizens for jury service, so the poor can afford to participate direct consequences of the wartime egalitarian spirit. Now, as we leave the Persian Wars behind, we envision Athens in 478 BC. The Athenians filed back to their city from exile. On a clear spring morning, thousands ascend the Acropolis not to find despair, but to undertake a solemn labor. They gather the broken statues and stones left by the Persians and bury them respectfully, forming later what archaeologists call the Persian debris. They then begin laying new foundations. Women, men, children all haul stones for the new walls and temples, working side by side, laughing about how they tricked the Spartans, telling stories of Marathon and Salamis with deserved pride. The city hums with rebuilding. A spirit of collective endeavor pervades. It is our city, our walls, our temples we rebuild, not a tyrant's pet project, but our own. In the evening, after a long day's rebuilding, the citizens gather for a simple meal. Perhaps a veteran rower recites a bit of Homer, how Odysseus outwitted the Cyclops, and everyone chuckles at the parallel to Themistocles and Xerxes. They drink to Athens, to freedom, to fallen friends who gave their lives that our city lives free. And then they drift to their homes under the gentle Attic night. Athens' democracy has survived its greatest test and emerged stronger. The city's horizon now is boundless. The Persians have been pushed back. The League of Allies looks to Athens for leadership. Arts and philosophy, trade and architecture, all will flourish in the fertile soil of freedom and confidence. The golden age of Athens and the glory of democracy. With the Persian threat repelled and Athens at the head of a powerful alliance, the mid-5th century BC becomes the golden age of Athens, often called the Age of Pericles. It is a time when the ideals of democracy, having been secured in war, are turned to peaceful triumphs. The city hums with construction, ideas, and artistic creation. Yet through it all, that gentle, steady pace, ideal for sleep and retention, remains. Let us stroll slowly through Golden Age Athens as through a sun-dappled grove, observing its people and their gentle rhythms. We begin on a bright morning on the Acropolis, now a vast building site. Under the patronage of Pericles, a charismatic statesman and general who has the trust of the people, great temples of marble rise where Persian flames once raged. Listen, tap tap, the sound of mallets on chisels as sculptors carve fine details into friezes. Creak as an ox team slowly hoists a column drum into place via a wooden crane. The most magnificent of these projects is the Parthenon, a temple of dazzling white Pentelic marble dedicated to Athena Parthenos, Athena the Maiden. Workers move leisurely but with purpose, fitting each block so precisely that no mortar is needed. They pause often, for shaping marble is delicate, a slow, almost meditative labor. Overseers call out measurements. A flute player on the scaffold's edge plays a soft tune to lift laborers' spirits. Under a nearby awning, the sculptor Phidias directs apprentices in assembling a giant gold and ivory statue of Athena that will stand inside the Parthenon, the goddess in full armor, nearly 40 feet tall, holding a 6-foot statue of victory in her hand, a resplendent image of the city's might and piety. Step down from the Acropolis into the Agora, the heart of daily life. The Agora in the Golden Age is a spacious square bordered by colonnades, stoas. In the cool shade of the Stoa Poikile, painted stoa, citizens gather to admire famous mural paintings of legendary battles, including one of Marathon, where, among the painted heroes, Theseus is shown rising from the earth to join the fight, and maybe a tiny figure of Pan in the distant hills. This stoa has also become a haunt of philosophers. There, of a morning, you might find Socrates, barely 20, listening intently as older men debate what is justice. Or can virtue be taught? The atmosphere is relaxed, conversational. A few laugh at an intellectual joke, others furrow brows at a challenging thought, but all feel free to question even the highest ideals. Democracy's ethos that no opinion is above scrutiny permeates even philosophical talk. Across the way, under a plane tree, Pericles himself strolls with friends. His face is serene, aristocratic yet approachable. A delegation of allies from Lesbos bows to him. He courteously directs them not to himself, but to the council house, reminding them Athens' policies are decided by the people. For though Pericles is the foremost man in Athens, repeatedly elected general, strategos, year after year, he always addresses the assembly persuasively, never commanding by fiat. It is said his words are like thunder and lightning when he chooses, but today, as he passes some children playing at war with sticks, he simply smiles and pats one on the head. The children giggle and run off, weaving between the legs of an imposing bronze of Harmodius and Aristogeiton, which now stands proudly in the Agora. The original pair having been stolen by the Persians, a replacement was erected a few years after Salamis. Every so often, an Athenian citizen walking by that statue straightens his posture and feels a swell of quiet pride. Here in the open stands a memorial not to kings or gods, but to citizens who struck down oppressors. It embodies the spirit of the age. The social structure of Athens remains in some ways traditional, and in others markedly open. It is still a patriarchal society. Men handle politics, war, and the marketplace. Women oversee households and sacred domestic rituals. But even women have more space now, with many men busy in public affairs or on naval expeditions. Women of modest families are often out and about, veiled usually, buying food or attending local festivals. In the Agora, you can see respectable matrons at dawn bargaining with fish sellers and vegetable hawkers, their slave girls trailing behind with baskets, a scene of normalcy that belies the radical politics in the air. Speaking of slaves, Athenian democracy coexists with slavery, mostly. Non-Greek were captives or their descendants. Slaves do much of the manual labor, yet even slaves in Athens are said to have it easier than elsewhere. An easygoing ethos prevails. One foreign visitor notes you can't easily tell a slave from a poor citizen by behavior, since Athenians of all kinds speak their minds freely. A slave might even argue with his master here, something shocking in Sparta or Persia. The democracy's confidence trickles into the general culture as a certain casual freedom. Every fifth day or so, a herald walks through the Agora mid-morning shouting, "Assembly meeting tomorrow on the Pnyx, all citizens attend." On the morrow, thousands duly climb the Pnyx hill just outside the Agora. They settle on the semicircular stone seats carved into the slope, facing a bema, speaker's platform. The sun is warm, but the sea breeze out of the west makes the olive trees rustle and carries away the occasional snore of an inattentive farmer dozing in the back rows. Business begins. Perhaps they debate sending more ships to help a revolt in Egypt against Persia, or they vote on a law increasing the funding for public festivals so even the poor can attend theaters for free. Pericles will introduce something called the Theoricon, a fund for theater tickets. Each issue is introduced by a council proposal, then open to the floor. A thin, energetic man named Cleon, a tanner by trade and something of a loud demagogue, steps up and harangues the crowd with scathing wit. In coarse language, some aristocrats roll their eyes, but many common citizens cheer, for Cleon says what we're all thinking. Then Pericles takes the bema, his voice low and steady. By now the crowd falls into a hush not out of obligation, but respect earned. He counters Cleon's points one by one with logical firmness and paints a loftier vision. Remember, Athenians, we are the model for all of Hellas. Let us act in a manner worthy of that destiny. When the vote is called by show of hands or by dropping pebbles into urns, Pericles' moderate policy carries. Cleon scowls but accepts the outcome. Tomorrow is another day in the assembly. When the assembly disperses, many go not home, but to the gymnasiums or baths. Athens has lovely public spaces like the Academy, a shaded grove outside the city, and the Lyceum near the Ilissos stream. In these afternoons, you will find older gentlemen exercising naked in the palaestra, wrestling ground. Two grapple in a friendly match watched by youths sitting on the grass. Under an olive tree, philosopher Anaxagoras explains to a group the movements of the sun and moon. He controversially suggests the sun is a fiery rock, not Apollo's chariot startling ideas afoot in free Athens. A few stragglers from the assembly wander in and join the discourse, still sweaty from their Enix hike. Even the most mundane citizen is becoming a bit of a philosopher in this intellectual ferment. As evening approaches, Athens' atmosphere turns festive. If a festival is on, and there often is. During the great Dionysia in spring, torches line the way to the theater of Dionysus. The entire city and visitors from allies fill the carved stone seats before dawn to watch 3 tragedies and a comedy in a row. Imagine, as the stars fade, a hush as a chorus of 15 masked men in splendid robes enters the orchestra, circular stage, singing in unison a haunting chant. All are citizens, even some of the poorest participate, since Pericles instituted pay for theatrical performers so any man can afford to serve. Today they perform Sophocles' new tragedy, Antigone. In the audience, Pericles sits in the front row, a perk of office, and beside him notably is Aspasia, his companion, a learned woman from Miletus who has no official standing, since women can't vote or hold office, but is respected by many leading men for her wit and insight. It's scandalous to some that Pericles brings a woman to a public event, but Athens in this golden age can be surprisingly cosmopolitan and tolerant of eccentricity. As the play unfolds, the tale of a young woman defying a king's edict in the name of higher justice, the audience is riveted. Tears flow during the final lament. Athenians are unashamed to weep at poignant drama. They emerge moved and pensive, a democracy that can put kings and their edicts on trial on stage as well as in reality. As night deepens, small symposia, drinking parties, gather in the mosaic-floored andron, men's quarters, of wealthy homes. Reclining on couches by the light of oil lamps, men of various ages and stations mix wine with water in a crater bowl and pass around kylix cups. They dedicate the first sip to the gods and then begin lively conversation. At one gathering, you might hear Herodotus, a visiting historian from Halicarnassus, regale the group with anecdotes of far lands. He's come to Athens because its tolerant, curious atmosphere suits him as he writes his histories of the Persian Wars. On cushions nearby, Euripides the playwright debates with Socrates the meaning of the play they saw earlier. Laughter erupts often. An amateur musician plucks a lyre now and then to accompany a witty song poking fun at some politician. In democracy, humor is a weapon and a pastime. A flute girl hired for the evening plays a lilting melody while a few tipsy young men clap along. As the night grows late, talk turns to the stars overhead, how bright and free they look. One older man, a veteran of Salamis, raises his cup and proposes a toast. To Athena and to freedom, may we never live a day without them. They drink, the wine smooth and mellow, and one by one drift into pleasant drowsiness as the lamps burn low. Outdoors, the city sleeps under the watch of the Parthenon's unfinished columns shining in the moonlight, and the colossal bronze Athena Primacos, recently erected, a giant statue of Athena striding with spear and shield that gleams even at night. Owls hoot softly from the dark groves. The long walls that Athens built a few years back, fortifications stretching miles to the port of Piraeus, encircle the city in a protective embrace, ensuring that even if enemies surround them, Athens can laugh and live, supplied by sea. Those walls also symbolize Athens' unconquerable link to the sea, the source of its new empire and democracy's backbone, the rowers. On a distant rampart, a lone guard hums an old hymn to Selene the moon. All seems secure. This golden Athens is not without future shadows. The ambition that built an empire will eventually lead to conflict with Sparta, the Peloponnesian War, and internal strains. But tonight we do not worry about that. Tonight, within these walls, is harmony and vitality. Tomorrow the assembly will convene again, and citizens will argue and decide matters of state, sometimes wisely, sometimes emotionally, but always with the conviction that it is their right and burden to do so. Arts will continue to flourish. Phidias will complete the Parthenon sculptures depicting not kings, but citizens in religious procession, the first time common people are so immortalized on a temple, a quiet marvel of the age. The philosophy schools will sharpen minds that soon produce men like Plato. The drama competitions will yield masterpieces by Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides that still move souls millennia hence. The history of Herodotus will set the foundation for rational inquiry. In the gentle darkness before dawn, an Athenian baker rises to start kneading dough. As he lights his clay oven, he reflects on yesterday's assembly vote. He spoke for the first time, urging a fountain in his deme be repaired. It passed. A small thing, but he made a change in his world. Such is the empowerment that hums in the air like the first stirrings of birds before sunrise. In a few hours, the sun will crest Hymettus mountain and pour golden light over Athens. It will strike the bronze tip of Athena's spear on the Acropolis. That shining point will be visible to sailors far at sea, a beacon of the city. As the city wakes, a trumpet on the Pnyx will sound, summoning citizens again maybe to debate sending aid to a rebel colony or to vote funds for a new public gymnasium. And Athenians will gather willingly, rubbing sleep from their eyes, ready to decide their common fate together. These are the early days of democracy in Athens, driven by hope, tempered by trial, alive with voices. No kings command here, no tyrant silences debate. The people govern messy, inspired, exasperating, courageous. In this unprecedented freedom, they find not chaos, but an unexpected order, the order that comes when free minds align on common purpose. Under the dimming stars, let us take one last slow look. The marble temples, the olive groves, the twinkling hearth fires in simple courtyard homes, the murmur of a night watchman softly singing to stay awake. The city rests, gathering strength for another day of creation and decision. The demos sleeps tens of thousands of ordinary men who together are the extraordinary power of Athens. In a short time, they will rise with the sun, take up their tools or weapons or pens, and continue building what they call the School of Hellas, the envy and inspiration of the Greek world. Athens' story will continue through glory and catastrophe, but the spirit fostered in these early days of democracy will never entirely fade. It will echo down ages, reaching far beyond Greece, whispering the idea that people given voice and agency can achieve greatness. But for now, the city's energy has ebbed into peaceful slumber. Let us leave Athens here in this sublime balance of vitality and tranquility, democracy's cradle gently breathing under the Attic sky. As the first hint of dawn silvers the eastern horizon, the chorus of roosters begins anew, and Athens will awaken free. Athena's aegis, the shield of the goddess, seems to cover the city with its quiet protection in the last hours of night. The early days of Athenian democracy have not only been survived, but cherished. In this calm anticipation before sunrise, all is well. Athens is at peace, the people rule, and the future, like the soon-to-rise sun, slowly brightens with promise. Sweet dreams now of marble colonnades and sunlit seas, of voices raised in debate, and song dreams of a city where gods and citizens shared in greatness, where even the lowliest had a part in the noble chorus of governance. In this soft Athenian night, rest, knowing that the torch of freedom is alight here and its glow will never entirely dim so long as story and memory live. Athens's early democracy shines on a gentle, guiding light for the world, and for us, a calming inspiration as we drift into our own peaceful slumber.